Welcome to the Escape and Empower podcast. Escape from the corporate rat race to empowered franchise ownership. Are you ready to take control of your destiny, follow your dreams, and live life on your own terms? Join our hosts, Dave and Pete, for insights on how to break free from the corporate grind, ditch the 9-to-5, and step into empowered franchise ownership.
Good morning and welcome to the Escape and Empower podcast. My name is Dave Greenberg and I'm here with my partner, friend, and co-host, Pete Gilfillan.
Good morning, Dave.
Pete, what is happening in your world today?
Oh, I'm just pumped up as usual. It's always a great day when I get to help people take control of their destiny, build wealth, and live life on their terms like you do, right? So
it's a beautiful thing.
You know, that's our mission. And one of the things we always try to do is to answer a question.
Right.
And so today, what question do you want to answer?
How do you face your fears during a job transition?
Ooh, that's a big one. And there's a lot of people going through career transition, right? They're getting thrown in. We were talking about it earlier today, right? This ageism, people getting pushed out, or companies just eliminating jobs to hit a quarterly number. Can you believe that? There's just no loyalty out there anymore.
No, and when you think of fears, you know, it certainly is something that you deal with. I think I've said this before. I wrote some blogs during the pandemic where I was really talking about fear because fear was everywhere. And fear is something, you know, it's about the unknown. And in the corporate world, you and I both lived it. You know, fear is something we don't control. Does the vice president wake up in the morning and not like you? Does HR all of a sudden have a change in strategy and you're on the bench? Or is there someone that wants to move you an 18th time like you and I have done, Pete, and we're just done because your next job is across the country or across the world, which we've both experienced? Fear is super important to think about. And what I like to acknowledge first is don't ignore it. Acknowledge your fear. Acknowledging fear is tough because whenever you're in transition, you get into self-assessments. Or when you're thinking about transition, you get into self-assessments. A lot of people, okay, I got to brush off my resume. I got to start my networking. I got to clean up my LinkedIn. But don't forget about these emotional components that can be paralyzing. And honestly, we've all been there. And we've all gotten out of them in a different way. But my own fears in my executive role is something that was really taking a toll on my health. It was scary because everything was tied into Ford Motor Company. Love it, still love it. I'm cheering them on from the sidelines. But you know, I started to lose my identity. All I had was a title. And when I acknowledged those fears and I saw transition coming, you know, I really started to think about how I kind of memorialize what is the fear that I'm experiencing. The idea of losing a steady paycheck, the idea of a new industry, the idea of having to talk to my family about losing my job or putting new risk, you know, because I was a sole breadwinner. So when you think about the first point I want to make to those people addressing fear, take some time to acknowledge them, make sure you don't ignore them, take some time to write them down, journal them, however you're going to do it, and be specific because, you know, I always had a couple mentors that always said, you got to eat the elephant one bite at a time. You got to compartmentalize things. So write them down, put them in buckets, and take one step at a time to start addressing your fears. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And it is about journaling and just taking an inventory of where you're at with the fear because it's real. You and I lived it, right? It's scary thinking about a new industry, a new job, or going a path of becoming an entrepreneur. It's just scary, that time of uncertainty. And you and I live that certainly in the corporate world. And that's just part of it. You know, I think the second thing is when we talk about fear is this idea of reframing job security when it comes to a company, right? And I always kind of say, when you have a job, that is not income security, right? At any point in time, that company that can decide that you no longer work there, right? The bottom line is that we were raised that a job, a W-2 was security. And those days are gone. It's just, bottom line is there's no more loyalty, right? And corporate world is pushing out senior level executives, laying them off, restructuring mergers, whatever it may be. And so at any point in time, you could have a number on your back, and it doesn't matter who you are, your experience. You've been there for 27 years, you've been there for 4 years. Bottom line is that you're getting pushed out. When you have your own business, bottom line is that nobody's going to lay you off. Nobody's going to, kind of do you wrong in terms of taking away your income, taking away your career. It's very liberating to be your own business owner, an entrepreneur, because you have true security. Nobody can mess with you. So an actual item is make a list of things that felt unstable in your job. Maybe it's this idea of a potential layoff or a toxic boss, and then figure out, okay, then write down what things could I get out of being a business owner, an entrepreneur, right? What would be things that allow me to shift from that idea of security isn't from a corporation, but more from your own business?
That's great, Pete. We're starting to talk about things that should come naturally to people when they're planning their business or executing their business or coaching employees, memorializing things and starting to think about how you move forward. And one of the pieces of head trash that a lot of people get caught up with is self-doubt. And when I talk to people in transition, it comes out. And I ask a simple question: how have you failed? When have you failed? At what have you failed? And very often, they've been through self-assessment and they might have a couple things, but we're talking to winners. We're talking to executives that have moved the ball forward for themselves, their people. They all build teams. They all love to develop people. And they've all moved the ball forward to create probably revenue growth or cost reductions or new product introduction. So don't forget that, and don't forget what got you to those points of success. Some people call it a growth mindset. And I like that because, okay, you're building. People love to build. People love to create. And so you're going back to not seeing the challenges in front of you. You're starting to think, okay, how can I take that growth building mentality and mindset and turns it into opportunities to learn and move forward? I know it's hard sometimes, but you need to do it, because if you don't believe in yourself, you might as well hang up the cleats. And you've got to the place where you're out because you've done great things, and good things happen to good people. Now, I'm not trying to be a rose-colored glass person, because whatever you're doing, self-doubt creeps in, and that self-doubt can really be paralyzing. Take a moment for it, think about it, and commit to moving beyond it with maybe a learning action or going into some new venture. Or if you're talking to us, we'll talk about how to build your due diligence through the evaluation of a franchise and a process. So don't let self-doubt overcome you as a fear. Think about all you've done to build and create and start doing it for yourself.
Well, I think a little bit about Tony Robbins and Darren Hardy, and they always kind of say the idea is you burn the boats or you burn the bridges, right? There's no going back. Whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to be successful.
Right.
And if you have doubt, if you're a race car driver and you look into the wall, you're going to hit the wall, right? So it's this idea of having confidence in yourself. Doubt is part of what happens, but you have to overcome that by having that confidence in yourself. There's nothing better to invest in than yourself, right? Bottom line, I can't think of anything else I would rather invest in but myself, right? I am in control of that. I get better and stuff like that. And when we talk about this idea of overcoming fear, I also think about this idea that you need to build a plan to reduce your risk. Right? Going into a business, if you build a plan, you can reduce risk. And fear comes from uncertainty. So when you have that uncertainty, we want to build a solid plan that can make you feel confident in where you're going from that standpoint. Now, it's a calculated decision, and you and I, we help executives all the time evaluate franchise opportunities and go through the process to find franchises right for them. And part of investigating franchises is putting together a plan of, if I were to invest in a franchise, what would I have to do, right? What steps do I have to take? And the cool thing about a franchise is that then they also, as you become a franchisee, they have a playbook. You follow the system. You use your experience and you follow the system. And also having that plan basically reduces your risk. And so if we can mitigate risk by having a good solid plan for our business, leverage a franchise that has a good solid plan, bottom line is we're in a much better position. So the takeaway is create a simple transition plan. Outline things like what kind of financial runway, how long is it going to take to replace my income? Think about a couple different paths you can take. Maybe it's franchising, maybe it's creating a consulting business, but put together a plan, because when we have a plan, a lot of times we achieve that plan. Not having a plan, you get paralyzed, you freeze up. Have a plan.
I love it, Pete, because my dad always talked about success is when opportunity meets preparedness. And that was all about having a plan. And, he's from the military. He was a Marine, and, he always had that. But what the other thing that he always had, and he always talked about this, is you're not alone. Support systems exist for a reason, and the fear of isolation is paralyzing. And, one thing I always talk about a franchise system, because you and I have been part of them, we've invested in them, we've helped people find the right franchise systems. You're never on an island by yourself in the system. There's always a franchisee going through what you're going through. There's a franchisor that wants to support your success. So this fear of isolation is something that really goes away when you enter the franchising system. But when I say support systems, there's a whole bunch more behind that that you can't forget. It may be the man upstairs. It may be the power and community. It may be those mentors that you've leaned on, or the mentees that you helped, your spouses or industry experts. It might be a podcast episode that all of a sudden starts to give you the wisdom that my grandfather gave me that still works for me today. He said, do you want to be the hunter or the hunted? He would always say that to me whenever I had dinner. I said, Pops, I want to be the hunter. It's a good boy, let's go. So, my point is, identify a person, identify a resource, and start to lean on those support systems and leverage them. Don't forget about them, because they're there for a reason.
There's no question about it. And as we think about this idea of fear, one of the things that is so important to overcome fear is that, right, taking action to build confidence. Fear thrives in inactivity or being inactive, right? And the longer you sit and think about the what ifs and why and right? Bottom line is you get frozen up. That fear continues to build. But when we take small steps to move forward, things start to change, right? And that's the idea, is when we have a business, right? You and I work with people to help them empower themselves to take control of their destiny. But it starts with taking a small step. And I think about a candidate I work with, and she really loved being an executive. And unfortunately, she got pushed out of her company. No fault of hers, just her number is up. We don't know if it was ageism or they just had a number they had to hit for their bottom line. But bottom line, she got pushed out. And she was really scared, had a ton of fear about this idea of doing something else. She just wanted another corporate job. But I said, just take some action to learn a little bit about a franchise. You don't have to invest in a franchise, just take the step. So she took the step and started learning about franchising. She got further enough along to where she actually went to a confirmation day. She felt really good about a franchise company. They felt good about her. She went to a confirmation day. That activity allowed her to be empowered to make the decision to invest in a franchise. Now, when we talk about investing in a franchise, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to quit your job. You can have a franchise on the side. You can look for a job and start a franchise on the side. So there's many different ways in which you can do it. But the idea is that fear comes from inactivity, not taking action or movement. So go out there. Your assignment is to take one action, commit to an action this week, and go out there, and you can certainly reach out to Dave at the Empowered Franchisee or me at Hire Yourself, and just take that step to have a 15-minute call so we can learn a little bit more about you and tell you a little bit about how we can help you take a step towards, for lack of better terms, a new path. And franchising may or may not be for you, but you got to get past that fear of being immobile. I don't know what I'm going to do, to taking small steps for all the reasons we talked about today.
I love it, Pete. Activity breeds activity. And if you have no activity, nothing's going to happen. And, many times, more often than not, when you get into the process of evaluating and investigating franchise ownership and opportunities, other things appear. And you get that confidence that, I know we both know someone really close to us in the corporate world that says hope is not a strategy, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Daryl. But when you think about hope, it's important, right? Because hope really turns on a light and it has you think differently. So, face your fears during your job transition. Give us a call. We're happy to talk to you one-on-one, whether you want to look at a franchise or whether you just want to talk about facing fears or the other subjects in our podcast. Pete, thanks for helping out with this great conversation today.
You got it. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Escape and Empower podcast. We hope today's discussion has inspired you to consider franchise ownership as a path to living life on your own terms. Start your journey towards financial freedom and flexibility. Connect with Dave at empoweredfranchisee.com or Pete at hireyourself.com. Until next time.